You may think that the city in the US with the highest poverty rate would be somewhere like Baltimore or St. Louis, or maybe even a smaller city like Gary or West Memphis. Well, what if I told you it was none of these cities, instead being a community you've probably never heard of with almost no crime, and that this community has the lowest median age by almost 10 years, and that it's the fastest growing city in the entire state of New York. These statistics seem crazy, but this is Kiryas Joel, one of the strangest and most fascinating communities in the country, which has an incredibly unique culture and is responsible for one of the most important land wars in the country. Today I'm going to tell you about this city and the divisive position it's found itself in. Before that though, please consider subscribing to the channel. We make geography and city content like this every week, and I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers this year. So if you enjoy the videos and want to easily support me, subscribing would help me out a ton. Thank you. So I just dumped a lot of facts on you that brings up questions about this community. So let's backtrack and start by just talking about where and what Kiryas Joel is. So this village, which is also known as KJ, which I'm pretty sure isn't derogatory, is located in Orange County, New York, around 45 miles north of New York City. This is right along the Hudson Highlands, making for some hilly terrain within the community limits. Bordering this village is the towns and villages of Monroe, Harriman, and Woodbury. Kiryas Joel has a population of around 41,000, a massive increase from where it was previously. In 2010, it had 20,000, in 2000, it had 13,000, and in 1980, it had just 3,000. This shows what kind of population growth has been seen in Kiryas Joel, but it can be easily explained once you know a bit more about the village. See, the community is entirely Jewish, specifically a form of Orthodox Judaism called Hasidic Judaism. This is a Yiddish-speaking form that was created in the 18th century and is considered by most as ultra-Orthodox, with the main focus on devotion. The town is basically run by religious leaders, which has created a pretty interesting set of rules for residents and visitors. On the city's welcome sign, people are asked to follow the customs and modest lifestyle, which includes wearing long skirts or pants, covered necklines, sleeves past the elbow, and maintaining gender separation in all public areas. This sounds crazy, I know, but you have to understand the way the village is run by the religion, which has very serious customs that have to be followed. Within KJ, though, the Hasidic lifestyle centers around family and specifically children, which has resulted in an insane birth rate. It's normal for families to have 8 or more children, which has brought the median age all the way down to 14.8 years old, which is by far the lowest in the US. This is even higher than it was in 2011, which was 11.3 years old. This birth rate and large family culture has resulted in a lot more oddities in the demographics, though. 90% of the population speaks Yiddish, which as far as I can tell is the largest percentage of non-English speakers outside a native reservation. Over 40% of residents live below the poverty line, also being the largest percentage in the country. Despite this poverty rate, though, there is no homelessness and virtually no crime in the city due to pretty much everyone following religious customs. About half of the residents receive food stamps, and 1/3 receive Medicaid benefits and rely on federal vouchers to help pay their housing costs. A small tidbit for my public transportation people, the village has its own bus system and has a very high usage rate. So there you go, guys. Just move to KJ and become a Hasidic Jew, and you don't need to own a car. It's really not that hard. Now you may be wondering why the poverty rate is so high. Well, most of the men in KJ devote themselves to the Jewish religion rather than academics, with only 39% of the village having a high school degree. This means a bulk of the men don't really work, and around 50% of the employed population works for the school systems to educate the very, 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 very large next generation. But there's even more that goes into the demographics in the entire story. So let's talk about how the village got to where it is today. So Kiryas Joel was formed by a group of 14 families from Williamsburg, New York City, another large Jewish community in the state. These Hasidic families found themselves being driven out by the residents of New York, which were becoming more and more secular. The city was also becoming extremely expensive, which didn't match at all with their want for a religious-focused lifestyle that valued work as an afterthought. These 14 families instead wanted a more secluded lifestyle where they could be away from the harmful influences of the outside world. So they decided the only way to get away from everybody else in the world was to move to the town of Monroe and build a community focused on multifamily housing to conserve space. Another quick tidbit, Kiryas Joel is one of a few Jewish communities outside of New York City in New York, including New Square and Kaiser. I only chose our community for the video because it feels like the most interesting instance of this, and it has a funny name. Anyway, they settled in KJ in 1974, much to the Monroe town officials' skepticism. This skepticism only grew as the community began getting larger and larger, constantly expanding outward into their formerly very quiet suburban town. This then led to one of the most heated and divisive land wars in the country. So I'll try to explain this extremely controversial topic in the most fun and lighthearted way possible. Basically, KJ was growing very quickly. There were so many new residents, so they needed more land to accommodate that growth, leading to annexation processes. Pretty simple, right? Well, the residents of the surrounding communities don't want this extremely dense, strange community expanding into their quiet suburban communities, so they fight back. The town of Woodbury was incorporated in 2006 for the sake of stopping KJ from annexing their land, since the community can only annex unincorporated land. These tactics continued, with the communities having valid concerns. One main concern was related to natural resources. Monroe residents had concerns of the impact Kiryas Joel would have on local aquifers and the wildlife in the region. This expansion was flattening hundreds of trees at a time, and you have to remember they are located within the Hudson Highlands, an important ecologically diverse region. This all boiled over in the mid-2010s when Kiryas Joel put in a petition to annex 164 acres of new land, which residents of towns like Woodbury and Monroe were firmly against. Kiryas Joel ended up successfully taking the land, and also being allowed to incorporate into their own new town, a huge win for its residents, who were being put in questionable conditions since there were simply too many people for the land they had. This agreement involved Kiryas Joel basically saying, hey guys, we promise we won't annex any more land for 10 years. This came into play when residents wanted to incorporate a new town named Seven Springs that would use another 900 acres to the west and south of the current territory. Residents of Monroe, again, did not like this. This land war is ongoing, as Kiryas Joel's population is set to continue exploding over the next few decades. I mean, in a few decades, this could be a village of 70,000 people in the middle of the surrounding small towns and villages. So yeah, the land war is not a great situation, with both sides having valid concerns. But there's even more to talk about here. So remember when I said KJ had the highest poverty rate in the country? Well, what if I told you they might not actually be insanely poor, instead using their large families to take advantage of government welfare while actually being in fairly decent conditions? This is a pretty big gray area, but there have been some issues for the city that have resulted in controversy. For example, a luxurious 60-bed postnatal maternal care center was built in the village using $10 million in state and federal grants. Questions arose about why KJ was getting this money. Another example of some shady stuff going on was a $14 million funding scam where 7 people, including a rabbi, stole money from a technology program designed to help underprivileged children. They were all arrested. Finally, there have been some ongoing concerns and court cases related to the public school system entirely located in Kiryas Joel. The obvious concern is the separation of church and state, which isn't the easiest thing because the entire school system is run by religious leaders. You can't really put 100 Hasidic Jews in a room and expect them to not talk about religion. Members of the city argue the separation of church and state was actually designed to protect the religious groups, not the schools and states. So, with everything you know, you can now look back at Kiryas Joel as a community. This is a situation that's hard to come at from an unbiased standpoint, but I think that both sides just need to be understood. The members of Hasidic Judaism need to have a community where they can go and practice their religion freely. There isn't going to be a place in the US that they can go to without disrupting the current locals, so there's not a way where an issue doesn't arise here. However, the residents of Monroe and the surrounding communities have valid concerns related to the natural resources of the area and the expansion of their community. So basically nobody's going to be happy and everyone's going to be mad at each other anyways. So you might as well look at it as just a way to educate yourself on the intricate and oftentimes divisive issues that occur related to this country's geography. That was a mouthful. Anyways, thanks for watching. Thank you to the members this week: Robert Hinn, Midwest Rail Fan, Q Games, Jake Hofs, Andres Quintero, DS, Richard Horwell, Mick Kastner, D. Garcia, Stephen Phillips, CJ Brick, Big Pasty, Resident Contrarian, Hazev the Wolf, Bunny, Hono Shukin, Brock Sanders, Stephen Priestman, SB Wilder, Forda Jake, Sir JC17, Alex Williams, Mikita Martinov, Kurt Ainsley, Jerome McCall, KMS162, JL, Bryson, Rosebud Ford, Darkbird, Wolfling73, Schneiderschwein, Benjamin Whiting, and Ryan Devins. Thank you to all of you guys. You're really helpful to the channel. If you want to become a member, the link is down in the description below. I have a city skyline series that we're doing for the members. So if you want to help me out as a person, all of this money is just going into my savings. So if you appreciate the content and you want to watch members only city skyline series, this is the perfect way to do it. Thank you.